One thing I've learned from watching horror films is to always trust dogs. Like imagine you and your family, you just bought a new house. It sits on a bunch of open land. There's a big ass lake on the property, a big ass tree, and y'all's dog just sits down on the doorstep, not wanting to go inside the house. Downright refusing, actually. That's dog speak for, "Ayo, you got me fucked up." And what that dog is trying to tell you is that danger. Life-threatening situation lies ahead. I'm Brandon O. This is Terrorific, and we're chopping up 2013's The Conjuring. Welcome back to the place where it's perpetually spooky season as we continue our trek through the theme of horrible hosts and haunted house guests. In this episode, I'll be analyzing the film's story, culminating in why I think The Conjuring is really just a Christian sermon with some really spooky shit sprinkled on top. Now, the film kicks off by saying it's based on true events that the Perron family experienced, which already lays the foundation for the credibility of the religious zeal that comes later. But how much is actually true though? Well, the Perron family consists of Mom Carolyn, Dad Roger, and count 'em 5 daughters, Andrea, Nancy, Christine, Cindy, and April. Now the eldest daughter, Andrea, she wrote a book in 2011 titled House of Darkness, House of Light, about the family's supernatural and paranormal experiences. In 2021, she told the Canadian network Global News that the family indeed experienced paranormal activity, stating that, quote, "Some were unpleasant, some were lovely, cordial, and communicative. From benign to benevolent to oblivious to mean-spirited, the spirits were just like us, a wide variety of personalities," end quote. What the fuck is an oblivious spirit? Like, are they just standing in the corner, like with a dunce cap, watching paint dry? Like, I don't really understand what that means, but anyway. In The Conjuring, events escalate quite quickly, but in reality, the Perrons lived in the house for nearly 10 whole ass years. Bruh, there is no way in hell I'm staying somewhere for a full decade when I'm experiencing spooky shit. I don't care how lovely, cordial, communicative, benign, or benevolent a spirit may be, it's still a spirit. And like the dogs say, y'all got me fucked up. The Conjuring is set in 1971 Rhode Island, which is the same year the Perrons really moved into the house. And fun fact, Rhode Island is the most Catholic state in the US by percentage of population. Exact figures vary today, but the generally accepted range is somewhere between 40 and 44%. But back in 1971, approximately 636,000 Catholics resided in Rhode Island, which made up about 61% of the state's population. And we'll explore more about how that religious influence impacts the themes and messages of The Conjuring. So let's get into the story. The film is streaming on Max, by the way, which is where I watched it. Which, side note, how many times is Warner Brothers Discovery gonna rebrand this goddamn app? I mean, it went from HBO to HBO Go to HBO Max to Max, now back to HBO Max. Like, what's next? Supermax HBO? HBO Big Max, Mega Max HBO, pick a name, stick with that shit, please. But anyway, the semi-fictional Perrons move into the house with their dog, Sadie, who, as I mentioned, wants no part of that whatsoever. So they're like, okay, have fun outside, and they leave her chained up. The kids start playing hide and clap, which involves the seeker wearing a blindfold, and they can request the hiders to clap up to 3 times as they try to find them. While playing this game, that leads to the accidental discovery of a boarded up cellar and one of the kids crashes through a wall and shit. And that is big nope energy for me. And maybe I'm not doing the best job of portraying myself as a brave person. But when it comes to the paranormal, the occult, the supernatural, or just plain eerie shit, I will be pusillanimous 10 times out of 10, and I say that with no shame nor embarrassment whatsoever. But the semi-fictional Perron family, they have other feelings about the matter, so they venture down into this dark, dusty, cobwebbed cellar, and Roger gets down there and he's just like, hey guys, I guess we have extra square footage now. Which, okay, I guess that's one way to look at it. And as I say that, it just occurred to me that perhaps that's the inspiration for AJ's line in Barbarian, where he says something similar. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, feel free to check out episode 14, the breastfeeding dungeon. Look at me doing unintentional callbacks. But anyway, there's a bunch of stuff down there, so they're all excited about stuff that maybe they can sell. Okay, cool. Night falls and the family's getting ready for bed, but before sleepy time comes pee-pee time. So Carolyn and Roger bang one out first, because as a couple, you haven't officially moved into a house until you smash. And when they awake in the morning, Carolyn has a mysterious bruise on her leg and she's like, Roger, what'd you do to me last night? He's like, I don't think that was me. Okay, so we have Sadie refusing to come into the house, this mysterious hidden cellar, and now mysterious bruises. That's 3 glaring red flags in the span of 24 hours. Okay, but there's more. The kids then complain that the house has been cold, and there's like a funky smell in the bedroom, like something died. And Carolyn's like, okay, well, is it still there? And the kid's like, no, it disappeared. And she's like, all right, well, problem solved. But Carolyn continues to make her way through the house, and she comes to the old clock in the hallway that has stopped at the time of 3:07. And as she ventures into the kitchen, the clock there by the sink also is stopped at 3:07. Now, why is this significant? Common folklore refers to the witching hour as occurring between 3 and 4 a.m. This is the time of night when supernatural entities are believed to be at their most powerful and also at their most active. It's considered a time when the invisible veil between the living world and the spirit world is at its thinnest. But why 3:07 specifically? There were 59 minutes that could have been chosen. Well, the film later explains why it was that time, but I have another theory that I will elaborate on a bit later. But here's an intentional callback to a previous Terrorific episode, BFT Moments. A BFT moment is an occurrence in a horror film that made me think to myself or say aloud, bro, fuck that. And The Conjuring is chock full of them. So as the morning goes on, the youngest daughter, April, she goes looking for Sadie outside and she starts frantically screaming. Turns out that Sadie is dead, like super dead. She's been strangled by her chain. But bro, this chain was like wrapped around the dog's neck like 17 times. Like she very clearly did not or could not have done this to herself. The semi-fictional Perron family's awareness level is like 0, bro. And this is yet another opportunity to get the fuck out that they fumbled. They have a collective butterfingers. And the weird stuff continues later that night as well. 2 of the kids who share a room, Christine and Nancy. Christine gets her foot grabbed while she's asleep and thinks that Nancy did it. Then the camera pans to Nancy, who has clearly been asleep the entire time as well. Christine complains about a stinky fart smell. So now we have our second confirmation that whatever spirit is in this house smells like absolute ass. But then Cindy starts sleepwalking and she walks into Andrea's room and starts banking her head into the wardrobe in there that came with the house. Bro, fuck that. And then the next morning, Carolyn wakes up with yet another mysterious bruise, this time on her back. This woman is getting her ass beat, and everyone is just like, yeah, I guess that's normal enough though. And here's another example of the semi-fictional parents' quote-unquote normalcy. The next game that they're playing for hide and clap, they play it upstairs. And these fools had a blindfolded person trying to navigate around the staircase. What? It looks like I was being generous by giving them a 0 for awareness, because that is dumb as hell. Alright? If my parents saw me playing some game blindfolded around stairs, boy, do you know how fast they would have snatched me up? Like, what the hell are you thinking right now, son? But hey, I guess times were different in 1971 Rhode Island. But anyway, someone starts clapping from that old ass wardrobe that came with the house, and as the blindfolded seeker approaches, she's like, haha, gotcha. I can hear you breathing. But psych! None of the other kids are in there. They all come in from behind like, hey, you couldn't find us. Like, what are you doing looking in the wardrobe? And so she takes off her blindfold. She's like all confused, like, what is going on here? Like, how many red flags do these people need? I just don't understand. But then we're back to nighttime. We're back in Christine and Nancy's room. And Christine wakes up yet again by getting her foot grabbed. But it's more severe this time. Like, she gets yanked. And understandably, she's starting to kind of freak the fuck out. She can like sense someone in the room with them. So she starts like looking under the bed. And as she comes up, she can like see someone behind the door. And so she's like super scared now. And so she's like whispering to Nancy like, hey, wake up. I think I see someone standing behind the door. And Nancy's like, huh? Like, I don't see anything. And like goes over to that area and just like is just standing there by this mysterious, dark corner of the room. And then suddenly the door slams shut on its own. And so now they're both freaking the fuck out. And then Carolyn comes rushing in and Christina's in tears saying she heard someone say that they want to kill her whole family. BFT. And soon after this, we get to the sequence that I think is like low-key hilarious. Another night falls, right? And Carolyn is the only one awake, but she hears someone playing hide and clap. And she thinks it's the kids being up past their bedtime. So she goes into each of the girls' room to check on them, and they are all asleep. And notably, she leaves each and every single door open as she exits, okay? And when she exits the final room, all the picture frames that have been hung up by the stairs, the wooden stairs, by the way, they come crashing down in this like cacophony of just loud shit, all right? Glass is shattered all over the place. It's super loud. Tell me why not one of these 5 children woke up. But somehow Nancy could hear her name being whispered by Christine in the bedroom scene. What? But okay. Carolyn is braver than me because she proceeds to investigate the ghostly sounds now echoing throughout the house. It sounds like children's laughter. And so as she gets downstairs, the door to the cellar slowly creaks open. And she pops her head in there and tries to act all tough, like she says, quote, "Whoever's down there, I'm gonna lock you in now." And as she turns around to leave, the door then slams in her face and she goes tumbling down the steps into the cellar. And bro, like she got her shit rocked. Like there's visible damage to her face. Like I can just imagine the spirit being like, yeah, talk that shit now, son. You locking me in? Yeah, okay. But as Carolyn is down here nursing her wounds back upstairs in Andrea's room, the malicious, malevolent spirit finally reveals herself as she's perched on top of the wardrobe in there, and she pounces on one of the girls. So they're all freaked out. And at this point, Carolyn's like, okay, we need some outside help. So she goes to the university, attends a lecture being put on by 2 demonologists, and finally enter Ed and Lorraine Warren. And this is where things start to lean a little more heavily into the religious, or I guess specifically Christian, rhetoric, as Ed is an unordained priest, essentially, and Lorraine is in touch with the spirit world. She can see and hear and have interactions with supernatural things. Carolyn asks the Warrens to come to her home to investigate, to which they agree. And after they get there, they're walking around the place trying to get a feel of things, and Ed notices that a door downstairs has been tied shut, and he asks why. Roger tells him that they had to tie it shut because it would just bang all night, just boom, boom, boom. And Ed asks if it would bang in threes, as Roger described, and he said, yeah. And he says, well, maybe this is meant to be an insult to the Holy Trinity. Ed then goes on to ask if the Perron kids have been baptized, to which Roger and Carolyn say no. And he says, well, you may want to do that because now that the Warrens are here, we will be seen as a threat. In the Bible, Jeremiah chapter 7 verse 3 states, quote, "This is what the Lord Almighty, the God of Israel says, amend your ways and your deeds, and I will let you dwell in this place." But how does this tie into the events of the film? Well, if you invert 7 and 3, you get 3 and 7. And the time that the clocks stop each day in the house is 3:07. After doing some research on the history of the home, the Warrens come to find out that the original owners were a farmer and his wife back in 1863. The wife's name was Bathsheba, and she was related to one of the women accused of witchcraft in Salem. Now, Bathsheba got caught by her husband sacrificing her 7-day-old newborn baby at the fireplace. And afterwards, she ran outside and hung herself from that big-ass tree on the land, and she proclaimed her love for Satan, then cursed anyone who tried to take her land. And her time of death was pronounced at 3:07 a.m. The Warrens also discovered that there had been other instances of previous owners of the home meeting similar grisly fates. So they come to determine that Bathsheba's curse is to cause mothers of families who move into her house to kill their children before ultimately killing themselves. So now we know the ghostly children that have been running around the house are the previous victims of Bathsheba's curse. Now, the inversion of 3:7 and 7:3 can be viewed from two angles, in my opinion. Number one, Bathsheba is perverting the word of God by taking the word literally. Amend your ways and your deeds, and I will let you dwell in this place. Unfortunately, the way that you have to amend your ways and your deeds is to kill your child or children and yourself. And then your spirit will be trapped in this place forever. You will be forced to dwell in this place. And then secondly, I think is more of a true inversion. Bathsheba does not want anyone to dwell in this place. Get off her land immediately or face dire consequences. Now, while talking about Bathsheba's sacrifice of her own baby, Lorraine says that she thinks the witch viewed childbirth as, quote, using her God-given gift as the ultimate offense against him to elevate her status in the eyes of Satan. Now, this read to me as a thinly veiled pro-life statement, as if Bathsheba's sacrifice of her child was symbolic of an abortion. And the fact that her husband came in and caught her doing it, to me, represents instances where the baby's father does not have any input in the mother's decision of what she does with her own body. And I think there's a heavy implication here that it's a woman's duty from God to bear children and that they should be grateful they were chosen for this almighty purpose. And to put it politely, that viewpoint is a little divisive. For women who choose to not have children for whatever their reasons may be, the message here is that they are throwing their God-given gift in the trash. And for women who are unable to bear children for whatever those reasons may be, the message here is that they were not deemed worthy of even receiving the gift from God in the first place. Again, to put it politely, that's a little divisive. And then Ed starts setting up crosses and sprinkling holy water around the house, and he says that, quote, the presence of religious icons will get a reaction from anything unholy. There's a heavy implication here that if you take exception with the presence of Christian symbols or imagery being forced into your space, and you vocalize your displeasure about that, then you are unholy. Yikes. Talk about shots fired. But then the pace picks up when Bathsheba fully possesses Carolyn. Carolyn is upstairs taking a little cat nap, and then she awakens to see Bathsheba hovering above her. And she screams, and while her mouth is open, Bathsheba pukes inside of it, and this transfers her spirit into Carolyn. Now, obviously, this is absolutely disgusting, but I think the scene was really well executed, and it was a really good jump scare. And I have a theory that it's yet another perversion of the Bible. In Revelation chapter 3, verse 16, Jesus is delivering a message to members of a church, and he says to them, "So, because you are lukewarm and neither hot nor cold, I will spit you out of my mouth." But in some translations, spit you out of my mouth is interpreted as vomit you out of my mouth. Earlier, when Ed asked if the Perron kids have been baptized, Roger said they weren't really a church-going family. This implies that they may be Christian but not actively practicing, aka having a lukewarm faith. But because Bathsheba worships Satan, Her mouth becomes the medium through which this vomit passes, and Carolyn is then forcibly recruited to the South Side team. And then just to tie a little bow on this theory, Chapter 3, verse 16, 1 plus 6 equals 7. Now we have our connection to the 3 and 7 yet again. But possessed Carolyn just starts wilding out. She goes full demonic mode, levitating chairs and all kinds of stuff. And the Warrens have to capture this activity on camera in order to get approval from the church to perform an exorcism. And after documenting all this demonic activity, the Warrens meet with the father and present their case. And he tells them that he's having difficulty getting approval for the exorcism because, quote, the kids aren't baptized and the family aren't members of the church, end quote. Wow. It's like, sorry guys, soul saving services are reserved for members only. That's tough. But the gang does eventually receive approval for the exorcism, and after a close call involving possessed Carolyn looming over little April with a pair of scissors, Lorraine places a hand atop Carolyn's head and she becomes awash in this bright light. She looks so calm and peaceful and relieved. It's basically a baptism via exorcism. Ed completes the ritual and banishes Bathsheba's spirit back to hell. Yay, the day's saved. Everybody can move on, live happily ever after. Hooray. And remember, this is all based on true events, so this was your PSA to baptize your kids just in case you ever end up possessed by a baby sacrificing 19th century witch. Now, movies, like most forms of art, are meant to say something, to express one's beliefs or ideals, make political statements, provide social commentary, etc. The viewer doesn't have to agree, and that's okay. I don't personally agree with any of the messaging that I've interpreted from this film, but I still think The Conjuring is a great horror film. However, I do think it's going to age poorly if it hasn't already. We live in a time where faith is so often being weaponized or used as subterfuge in certain instances to enact policies that are harmful and discriminatory to marginalized members of the population. But let's be honest, religion has always been a popular weapon of choice of powerful people since the day it first came into existence. The only difference between now and then is the speed and distance we're now capable of communicating with one another and the mediums through which we are able to do so. Communication breeds confrontation. We've gone from having arguments about whether or not Jesus was white to also arguing about whether he's red or blue. Pretty awkward. And on that note, I'm out of here. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, follow the show on IG at Terrorific Podcast, spread the word about how terribly terrific Terrorific is, and last but not least, remember, always keep it spooky.